Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You are tuned into Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on NBC News, CNBC News, and NBC Sports Radio, KCAA, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, Amazon Music, iTunes, Audible, and more. My name is Dr. Marissa. So delighted that you're back again for a show about hope and happiness. And to start today's show, a heart-opening story about humankind, emphasis on kind. I was called on location yesterday to Laguna Niguel for a beautiful story about Jacob and his mailman. Enjoy.
Was diagnosed March 11th of 2020 with Wilms, which is a kidney cancer. So he was stage 4, and we moved on to his lungs, hence the stage 4. And he has gone through about, give or take, 50 treatments of chemotherapy, 8 treatments of radiation, 2 major surgeries. He had 20% of his lung removed, and obviously the kidney removed. He's probably had another 10 to 12 other operations. He did probably 50 plus transfusions, and then he finished it off with a stem cell transplant, which was 45 days in the hospital. 35 of that is basically in isolation, where you can't leave your room for 35 days. So what kept our family kind of with COVID, with his situation, we don't have the ability to kind of go out, and his big thing before this has always been the mailbox. So a big part of him was to go out to the mail. He would dress up like a mailman, he would get the mail, he'd come back, and he would basically hand it out to us. And that's something he's done for years. So much so that at Chalk, they realized how important that was to him. They made him his own mailbox where the nurses and doctors would give him mail throughout the day, and that was his only journey during the time.
That was his only way of communication while he was in isolation, was his mailbox. All the doctors and nurses, child life specialists, even patients, other kids on the other floor would write him a note knowing that he wasn't able to leave his room. So it was excitement for him every day to check the mailbox and get his own personal mail in the hospital.
So that being said, thankfully a big part of our life delivering the mail, way more than he'd probably realize, because he was a chunk a day that was fun for them to go run out and get it, and
a safe thing to do.
Yes,
we're so limited on what we can do.
So then one of kind of a rough morning for him was when Mama Bear saw it and said, you know what, I've got to do something to kind of see if we can cheer up our boy. And that's where she completely put Van on the spot, and no other way to say it, but just kind of went into Mama Bear mode. Went out there and had a big ask. So, during the holiday season, you guys are so busy, and Van not only did everything, but he literally said the next day, be there at 9 o'clock in the morning. What he put together for our family in such short notice, and what he did will be something we remember for the rest of our lives. And it's amazing how, you look at a person and he can come through and deliver this for our kids, to put the happiness, that they talk about. I mean, our son's got a U.S. Postal tent upstairs. He has an outfit he wore in the hospital, but there's nothing like the real deal. And Van gave him the real deal show. And it's something where, we talk about you a lot, Van. So what you did for our family,
We can hear the mail truck turn the corner, and Jacob would try to run downstairs to catch you.
So he, from our family, thank you, Van, for everything you did. What you did for us is something, again, well, we can never say thank you enough.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Jacob here has always had this interest at being a mailman, okay? First time ever in my 33 years of delivering mail that I've ever had anyone come out and say that they want to be a mailman. There's always been an excitement for seeing the postal trucks come in, but never actually saying that I would like to be a mailman. So that was the first clue, okay? Then secondly, Mom asked that, is there a possibility that we can see the interior of the post office to see exactly what you actually do? And I said, well, because of safety and security issues, it's not necessarily something that we do on a regular basis, okay? But after that, Mom shared the story of the last 24 months of my guy here, Jacob. Shared about him going through his last therapy session over at Chalk, right around September-ish, September 21st or so, 22nd?
Yeah, the 11th. Yeah.
The 11th?
Yeah.
And she shared that with me, and then she also shared the aspect of being a marrow transplant recipient, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so those two things quickly popped into my mind and said that bone marrow this young and going through some of the things that he's gone through in the last 24 months. At that time, I said that I got to make this happen. So immediately after I left them, immediately before I left them, I told them, show up to the post office the very next day, I'll make it happen. And so I left them. Immediately after I got done delivering the mail, I got on the phone and I made my phone calls, letting my supervisor at the time, letting her know that I want to do this impromptu tour of the post office the very next day. And it was his birthday. The birthday was coming up on top of that.
No pressure.
No pressure. So this is Mama Bear wanted to make sure that her child's wishes were taken care of whenever she could. So I said, let's make it happen. So the very next day, they come down to the post office and I give them the tour, along with my postmaster, who said to me that we could have did way more than this.
Oh my gosh! That is amazing. That is so cool, Jacob. Oh my gosh, in a mailbox. Oh, and that thing is on Spanish. Oh my goodness. That is awesome. Do you like it? I love it. I think it's amazing. Are you gonna get in?
Oh, what a good brother. Legs in.
Look up here. Smile, Ava, smile.
Push on the gas. You're starting to move up.
Jacob, smile.
Okay, push on the gas.
Nice. Good morning. This is Dr. Marissa reporting live. You know me as the Asian Oprah, and I'm here with a very special mailman who just got to present a little boy who's been through a little bit with his own mail carrying vehicle.
Yeah, his own
Could you
mail truck.
introduce yourself and tell me why you're here?
I'm Lee Vance Singletary. I'm a letter carrier in the city of Laguna Niguel in a area called Rancho Niguel, and we got to, via the post office, present a postal mail truck to a very deserving young man today. And so it was just, I'm just excited that I was able to be a part of this whole thing. And just using his words, it's just been an awesome afternoon, put together by a lot of people. Our PR person, Corinne, really did a wonderful job in making this all happen. And
Beautiful.
It's just,
So
just great.
What was your reaction when you found out that he had stage 4 cancer and was in the hospital? And
It was just inspiring because the energy that you see him with today was the same energy that came out to the mailbox. And someone that's gone through what he's gone through in such a young life, you just can't help but get behind it. And
Absolutely.
if he's got that good, cheerful attitude about life and things to come, who are we to have anything less than that? So,
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for what you do. Thanks for
welcome.
bringing a story. You know me as Dr. Marissa. That
you.
balances out the bad news with good news,
Without a
with
doubt.
what's right with people, what's right with the world, and what's right with the post office.
Without
Thank
a
you
doubt.
so
Thank
much.
you.
You all for doing this for me. I cannot believe that this has just happened to me.
Aw. And can you show me the mailbox you used in the hospital?
And this is my mailbox that I used to have in my life.
Uh-huh.
It's neat because she pushed him.
And what would you want people to write to you right now?
Just like normal notes.
Uh-huh. And what was your favorite letter?
My favorite letter is all of the letters.
All the letters. Well, that's beautiful. So how are you feeling today being honored like this?
I'm feeling so happy.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do you have any message to all the kids out there who aren't feeling very good right now during COVID?
Yeah, just hope they feel better.
Uh-huh.
It's gonna go away soon.
Yes. Well, you're a great example of hope and happiness. So I do this thing at the end of every show, Jacob. Can you do this? Peace in, peace out, world peace through inner peace. Thank you so much, Jacob.
What do you say?
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else the media needs?
Jacob, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling so happy.
Beautiful. Thank you. You deserve it.
Great job. Enjoy.
Wasn't that beautiful? My heart still is so wide open just from getting to meet Jacob, talking to him, and his mailman. I mean, it's a beautiful story, and you know how I love to balance out all the bad news out there with good news, because it is out there. We just have to keep our eyes on it and shine the light on it. And when we come back, I'm continuing our conversation about money and happiness. I started the topic with Gerard Powell, who had millions of dollars and was still not happy. And today we continue with Geneen Roth, who had millions of dollars and was pretty happy. And then 10 million was taken from her by Bernie Madoff. He made off with her money, and she comes on to talk about how to deal with loss, how to deal with money, how to deal with living. That's when we come back here on Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And we're back. You're tuned in to Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News, CNBC News, and NBC Sports Radio Station, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere, including my YouTube channel, where you can actually watch and listen and enjoy not only all my past shows, but my red carpet playlist with interviews with people like Halle Berry and John Travolta, as well as my past 600 plus shows and my new short film, PPP, Post-Pandemic possibilities. All that and more if you free subscribe, and an alert at 8 in the morning when every new show drops. And as promised, here is a very important and interesting and lots of lessons to be learned when I talk with Geneen Roth. And she actually came on the show 3 times. I found out in the first interview that she lost $10 million from Bernie Madoff. And I said, I have to have her on the show for that. She agreed. And here it is. Enjoy.
And today, I'm blessed to have another past Oprah guest for the second time. Geneen Roth is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Woman, Food, and God. She's appeared on many national television shows, including The Oprah Show, 2020, the NBC Nightly News, CBS Early Show, Dr. Oz Show, and Good Morning America. Articles about Geneen and her work have appeared in numerous publications, including O, the Oprah Magazine, Cosmopolitan, Time, and the New York Times. Geneen Roth's pioneering books were among the first to link compulsive eating and perpetual dieting and deeply rooted personal and spiritual issues that go far beyond food, weight, and body image. She believes that we eat the way we live, and that our relationship to food, money, and love is an exact reflection of our deepest held beliefs about ourselves and the amount of joy, abundance, pain, and scarcity we believe we have or are allowed to have in our lives. And I was so grateful to have her last month come on and talk exactly about that. And we had a great time. It was a brilliant interview. And in doing the research, I came across something that I didn't know about, that I'm sure most of my listeners didn't know either. And that's why I asked her back on here. And she's going to talk about the experience of having all of her money taken away by Bernie Madoff. So thank you, Geneen, for keeping your promise to come back. Welcome to the studio again, Geneen Roth.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am so blessed to have you back. And I'm just amazed. Of course, you already have said it was a learning experience, but I would like you to take me back to that time, because I want to know you're human, and you can't have been as gracious about it when it happened. How did it happen?
Now, how did which part happen? How did we find out
Yes.
that we lost all of our money, or how did we end up investing with such a crook to begin with?
Okay, let's do that one. Or let's do both. Let's do both. You're successful. You worked really hard to get where you are and were at the time. This happened, 2 years ago? Not that long ago, right?
Oh, no. Well, no. The Madoff was arrested 5
years
and a half years ago. And I think I, like many women, and I think like many people, but women in particular, because after this happened, I did interview a lot of women, think that the world of finance is quite complicated. Mm-hmm. And so we either, actually, I'll talk in the first person here, because I don't want to talk for all women. I felt as if I was doing the work that I was doing in the world, which I adored and still do adore.
That you're very good at.
Started from nothing, with nothing, as a maid and a dishwasher, and then started doing what I loved. And for a long time, I wasn't even quite sure I was so clueless about money and investing, and because that always seemed to be the world of man and my dad and the big, powerful men who knew how to do it. And so I didn't really know very much. And when I met my husband in 1986, I assumed that he knew more than I did. And yet our history of investments was not very good. I seemed to be fine at doing what I loved and making the money I make doing that, but made poor investment choices. I always seemed to lose money in any investment I made. And it was after my husband and I, our financial advisor had embezzled quite a lot of our money in 2000 that a good friend of ours whose father had known Madoff invited us into his Madoff fund, where you could invest anywhere from $2,000 to anything you wanted to invest. He did that as a gracious thing for all of his friends, because he and his family had been invested in for 30 years and had done well that entire time. And we felt relieved and grateful, because when something has been working for 30 years, you assume that it's going to keep working.
Right. Right. And
So
I didn't even know about the
we-
prior embezzling. So you even had someone before this who stole from you. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's what I mean. I say in Lost and Found, my book that I wrote about this, if we decide to invest with anybody, people should run the other way. So that's probably a surefire way that you're going to lose money.
No.
But so that's how we ended up with Madoff. We didn't know who he was. We did, and my husband did actually the same thing as I did. We loved our friend and trusted him, and we'd known him for quite a few years, and we knew that he had something, that he was a lawyer and quite a successful lawyer, and we knew his family was successful, and that's how it happened.
Wow. Right. Okay. So then you found out, a call came in.
Then we got a phone call. Then we started putting more and more money. We actually used our Madoff account as a savings account in a way.
Wow.
Because my husband loves what he does. I love what I do. And
can I ask what your husband does? I don't know. I don't think I know.
His name is Matt Weinstein, and he works in the field of laughter and play.
Oh, wonderful.
So he gives. Yes, he's wonderful and very funny. Thank God.
And I've read, and I've read a number of things where your love for him comes out very, very strong. So yes. So you can tell him that you love him on the air.
We just thought Richard knew a lot, and instead of us doing all the research, seemed like Richard had done it, been working for 30 years, and this was a good thing. And so that's what we did. And then in December of 2008, which is when this whole thing got exposed, Matt went off on a lifelong dream trip to Antarctica for a couple of weeks. And I was by myself and got a phone call from a good friend of mine saying that Madoff was in handcuffs and that the whole thing had been a fraud and a Ponzi scheme, and all of our money and actually all of our friends' money, because we knew about maybe 20 or 25 other people who had done the same thing we did, because Richard extended this offer to all of our friends. Everybody had lost their money. And Matt and I, so that meant that we were left with basically nothing, 30 years of life savings having gone down the tube.
Wow.
And it was shocking and terrifying, and also shameful, really, because everybody knows that putting all your money in one place is not a good idea. And so there were so many conflicting and piled up feelings and emotions, terror and shame, and
wow. I'm so sorry that happened. I'm sorry that happened. I can't even imagine. It's not pleasant, that's for sure.
And there's more where that came from. I just love to learn from Geneen Roth. When we come back on Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It, Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.
back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And we're back. You're tuned into Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News radio station, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere here on the number one talk news station in the IE. And thanks to you, this is the number one 8 a.m. morning show here with me. And as promised, we're going to finish my interview with Geneen Roth with more wonderful things to pay attention to so you can be happy whether you have money or not. Enjoy.
But
No.
then
But
the recovery.
I called.
Yes.
I called a. As I say in Lost and Found, I'm not really. Well, I don't see myself as somebody who makes lemonade out of lemons.
Oh, really?
Although that seems to be what I do.
Right.
Because I have such good support and love in my life, I called a good friend and a spiritual guide of mine because I couldn't move from where I had answered the phone. And she said to me, after saying, "Oh, this is horrible and you'll need to grieve," and she was appropriately shocked, and then said to me, "Nothing of any value has been lost." And I said to her, "This is not the time to be spiritual," because it seemed, of course, something of value had been lost. We had just lost 30 years of our money, and I didn't know where we were going to live or how we were going to live, or if we... everything was in shambles. And over the next couple of days and weeks, I realized I spent the first couple of nights not being able to sleep at all. And because I just...
Well, it's sickening.
I was terrified.
Yeah, it's sickening. I mean, I can't even imagine that feeling. It's worse than... pretty much there's, what is that, the number 2 stressor, death of a loved one, the first one, and then financial loss, I think, is number 2. So
yes, it's very well because it connects in with your survival and how am I going to live, and all the things that money is connected with, and I realized that if I was going to be able to live through the night and the next days, and for all I knew the rest of my life, I was going to have to start focusing on what I hadn't lost, not what I had lost, what I had enough of, not what I didn't have enough of, and that was a vigilant practice for me.
Yeah.
And I did it somewhat out of survival because my mind, my ranting mind, was so intense and so terrified that if I allowed myself to get lost in my thoughts, then I was lost.
Right.
And I couldn't function. And so if I brought myself back to the fact that I had a roof over my head at that moment, the fact that I had enough to eat at that moment, the fact that I was fine at that moment, the fact that, the sky was still here and I could walk and see and breathe and drink and, I could eat and I was, whatever it was at that moment that I still had, I had to keep bringing myself back to that. And of course, that's the whole essence of any spiritual practice.
Right.
So it gets...
It's a discipline.
There's something about crisis that, and whether it's the crisis of losing everything as I did, or getting a terminal diagnosis, or almost dying, or of...
losing a marriage... That's a traumatic marriage.
Loss.
Losing a child. Yeah. And
That's
your
right.
formula is such wisdom. So if anyone out there is listening who loss of a job that you depended on, or loss of anything, that the beginning is allowing the grief, what you said your friend allowed you to work through, and then the discipline of focusing on what you have and who you are that is outside of that. That's what I heard. Is that about accurate?
Yes,
Okay.
that's true. I did cry a lot, and I got a lot of support. A friend came over and spent the night with me for the first 3 or 4 days, and I talked to a couple of people who I knew could sort of help me bring myself back when I went flying off the cliff of terror and shame. But that discipline of bringing my mind back and noticing what happened. I'll just take a step back for a second, because unless you do that, any decisions you make from the place of absolute terror are not going to be good decisions. And so really the only way to proceed is to somehow bring yourself into this very moment and to see what's happening in this moment. And from there, you can make decisions that actually are wise and objectively sound decisions, treatment plans, the kind of support you need, what to do next. I wrote, and for myself, after doing that practice for a couple of weeks, which, as I said, had been the essence of a meditation practice I've been doing for 30 years but hadn't been very successful at, suddenly with this loss, I was able to do that because it was about surviving moment to moment, just in terms of not eating myself up with shame and terror.
Right. And you said eating yourself, and I was going to ask you about that. You know, you're the old, when we talked last time on the air, and you talked about times when you felt suicidal around food and eating and weight. Did any of that come back?
No, that was that period. That was in 1978 that I was talking about being suicidal, and no compulsive eating came back. There was no desire to binge. No.
So your work,
none of that came back because the tools that I had this time, the choices that I could see I had, I saw that I had a choice. Choice A was suffer by getting lost in my thoughts, in my mind, and the shame and the terror. Choice B was bring myself back to this moment and breathe and notice that there were still birds, a sky over my head, that my dog still wagged her tail, that I still had a body, that I was still above ground, that I still had my mind, that there were, and the more I focused on that, the happier I became. Or certainly the less fearful I became, but I would say genuinely happy. That's the whole practice of gratitude and appreciation that Brother David Stendhal Roth talks about, which he says is the only practice any of us ever need. But it's something that we forget about all the time, to appreciate and take in the good we already have. And it works. That's the amazing thing.
Absolutely.
It really does work.
Absolutely. I start with 8 gratitudes every day as part of the 21-day fast from complaining. Wayne Dyer says 5, but I'm a recovering overachiever, so I do 8. And 8 is actually a homonym in Chinese for good fortune. So I absolutely concur. I didn't go through anything like that, but there's a similar vein when I went through the divorce, where all the money that I had made in my business was being thrown around in the lawyer's office, how much I was going to have to pay, and anywhere from $10,000 to $2 million, and up and down, and the business that I had built was gone. And I felt, when I stayed in my head, and same shame, blame, terror. And I can remember going to the gym, with that same, I don't know how I'm going to pay, and I don't know how I'm going to live. And I bumped into, not by accident, someone who said, you will always have a roof over your head, and you will always have food in your stomach, and you will always have people who love you.
Right.
And I'll never forget that day at the gym. Her name's Erica. And that discipline, and then choosing from that day forward to not focus and go down what I call the labyrinth of shiitake. Because as soon as I start doing the negative thinking and the worst case scenario, and then I end up in the effinator, there's no way out. And then I feel like crap.
Yeah.
And the only thing that works is gratitude. So yeah, absolutely. I'm there with you.
Yeah.
And then you wrote a beautiful book.
Right. Well, see, what happened is, and this is sort of goes to what we're just talking about, I started realizing that I had a lot to say about this because there was a lot of press there was a lot of press, of course, about all of this every day. The newspapers were filled with Madoff this and Madoff that, and
I know bad jokes too.
I realized that I had a different perspective, and I wanted to write about that and share that with people about how they could find their balance again. And because I had found mine within a couple of weeks, and because of that, a friend suggested that I write about it, and the piece was originally called "What Bernie Madoff Couldn't Steal from Me," and so I wrote it, and it appeared on Salon, I guess the first week of January, so about a month after the debacle, and it became their number one widely read piece on that. And then from there I realized I could write a book about it. And so that's what I mean. If I had lived in the shame and the terror, then I never would have written that piece, and I never would have written that book. And I never would have gotten actually interested in any of this. And so a lot of good came out of that. But I would say the most good, and I feel like, writing the book was fabulous, and I learned a lot about the relationship with money and how similar it is to the relationship with food. That was the most shocking thing for me.
Yeah.
But I would say the most good that came out of this was understanding that no situation that I'm ever in is unworkable. That if I can bring myself back to what is here, to just bringing myself back over and over and over again, while allowing the wash of feelings to come through, then no disaster has the power to tear me apart. And that's what I'd always been afraid of, that something would happen and I'd have a nervous breakdown, or I would not be able to survive emotionally, because I think I was afraid of my own mind and the very scary places that my mind could take me to. And even though I had lived through and worked through the trauma and the abuse that had led, in my opinion, to my compulsive eating for so many years, and I had had such a nasty childhood, the way so many people have had, I still didn't quite trust that I could be there for myself in the way that would help me live through a disaster like this. And having done that and having seen that I could, that's the best thing that came out of that.
Wow. I can totally hear that. It's like nothing can hurt you. There's nothing can happen to you that is going to take you down. Or
right.
that-
I mean,
that
I
you'll
will go
lose
down
yourself.
and I wake up and, a lot of times in bad moods and I get identified or triggered or reactive about a particular thing and I think it's the end of the world and then I catch myself. Then I realize I have a choice. So I think this is a back and forth process, but eventually you understand, you catch yourself sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner from that brink of disaster that you can go tumbling over. You don't get on the bus, so to speak,
Right.
of shame and guilt and fear. And, it's sort of like, and again, one of my spiritual great guides said to me, it's sort of like you don't get on the bus or get on the back of the bus and hang on to those pipes that are
smelly and
that
burny
are
and
spewing
hot.
diesel fumes and dragging you and bumping you along on the road. You just say, no, thank you, I'm going to let go. And I'm not going to do this time. I think we think that the more we suffer, maybe the more somebody will come and help us
Right.
or rescue
Right.
us somehow.
Right.
That if we're just feeling miserable and lonely and hysterical enough, then something will happen, because as a kid, something could have, should have, or else did happen, with somebody coming. But the thing is, we're adults, and so now we've got different choices, and
Right.
this is the
Right.
choice to know
Right.
that you have a choice.
Yes. That's the most powerful balance tool I know of.
Yeah.
That we have the choice. So it's your choice whether you want to feel sorry for yourself that you had 30 years of money taken and stolen away from you, and that choice leads you to a place where you're crying and laying in bed and bemoaning, which is okay as a normal grief process at the beginning, but 10 years down the line, if we're still in a fetal position, pickling in our victimhood, shame, blame, fear, terror, anxiety, worry, depression, it isn't much of a life.
No, it's not Bernie Madoff who did that to you. Then it's your own mind, and then it's understanding that it is your mind, and then getting the support that you need to learn how to do it differently. Most people do it like that. It's.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why there's 1 out of 4 are taking anti-something.
Yes, it's very hard to realize that. So I mean, some of it is biochemical and choiceless, and some of it really is a choice. For me, the most powerful thing is that moment where I see I've got the choice. Where, okay, I've got a choice now about where I put my attention. That is in your power.
Right.
The rest of the stuff, what happens, and even the thoughts you think, I don't think they're actually about what you choose to think. I would much rather not have most of the thoughts I think. Definitely not have those thoughts. But if I put what the choice is do I just, saturate and marinate in those thoughts and just keep on following them, or do I put my attention somewhere else?
Right.
That's what my choice is.
Right. And you mentioned the last time you were here that it's similar to food. So how is money also more than just about money? How do people be happy with or without money?
Well, first of all, one thing I want to say is that it's good to make distinguishing levels of without money.
Okay.
Because it's quite stressful not to have enough money to live, not to be able to pay your rent, not to be able to have gas money, not to
be able to pay your taxes,
know how you're going to go from day to day. In the same way that it's quite stressful not to have enough food to eat.
True.
So we're talking different categories here. I am not actually talking about, not either in my books about compulsive eating or in this book about Lost and Found about money, I am not talking about not having enough money to
survival.
eat.
Survival, right?
Yeah.
That Maslow's
Yeah.
hierarchy. Okay, so good
So
distinction.
that is it's important to say that because that's a different world, and I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm about to say. To say, oh, you can just think your way out of not having enough money to eat, and just focus on what you do have, not what you don't have. I mean, of course, you can still do that no matter what you have,
Right.
But this is a different category, and so I'm not an expert in that, nor do I want to talk to or about that.
Right.
What I do know, however, about money is that we all believe that more is better, in the same way that we believe that being thinner is better. That's why that saying, you can never be too thin or too rich, is out there as a cliched saying, because our culture buys into that. We buy into that belief system that when we're thin and or when we're rich, we will be happy. That will be the answer to it all, and that is just simply not true.
Right.
And it's not true based on the research that so many people have done about money. Stumbling on Happiness, Daniel Gilbert's book, talks about that. All the research that's been done that so many of us have read about the lottery winners winning money and being just as unhappy as they were before they had the money, because now they've traded one set of problems for a different set of problems.
Right, absolutely.
A thing out there is not going to make you happy.
Yep. I work with
What were you gonna say,
executive. I work with top 3-level CEOs, senior executive vice presidents in my consulting practice, and I can tell you that's. I mean, they make what, $5 million a year, some of them, and I'm coaching them. So obviously, they're not. They're not happy. And from a personal point of view, I can remember, in my 20s, I said, if I had $50,000 in the bank, I'll be happy.
Yes, right.
And then I got $50,000, and then it was like, oh, but let's go for inflation, so let's go for 150, and let's go. And then it was $1 million. Then it's never enough.
I know.
When are we going to be happy?
Well,
and then it all got taken away. So then, so I couldn't go there anymore. But I am happy.
Well, we had more when we lost our money in Madoff, because it was both my husband and I. It was 30 years, and we had between us more than $1 million, and I was still anxious about money, about what was going to happen, about how we were going to live when we got older, about did we have enough. I mean, there was that level of not enoughness, and I think this is this goes to the heart of what we're talking about, which is that there's something, I think, intrinsic to having a personality and an ego and living in this culture where more is better. We're breathing the air, swimming in the water. You can use whatever metaphor you want, but that we feel like we're not enough, we're not attractive enough, successful enough, we don't have enough money, we're not thin enough, we're not smart enough, we're not kind enough, we're not wise enough. I mean, just you name it, there's a not enoughness, there's a basic feeling of deficiency that we carry around that we then project on to many other screens, the screen of body and food and thinness, the screen of money, of success, of relationship, love, friendship. I mean, you name it, and people will often say, I don't have enough of any of those things, all of those things, two of those things. But the common denominator is not enough. And part of that is not paying attention to what you do have. Part of that, so therefore, and I'm going to use the analogy with food, that when we do eating meditations at my retreats.
Oh, and you have one coming up.
One coming up.
Yes, I was just going to say. Yes, please.
what will happen often with somebody, and you can notice this with yourself. I was noticing it yesterday. I was eating a piece of chocolate. I like chocolate a lot. I always, pretty much every day, have a piece of chocolate. My attention wandered. I put it on something else. My phone rang. I can't remember what, but then it was gone.
Right.
And I
You
felt
missed
like
it.
I had missed it, and I didn't have enough. And I wanted more because I didn't pay attention to the one that I had. And during the eating meditations at the retreat, we see with all of us that people are focused on the next bite. You know, they take one bite, they put it in their mouths, then they put the next bite on the fork, and the fork is on the way into the mouth before the one in the mouth is chewed and swallowed and done. So we're always focused on the next one, not this one.
Right.
And as long as you focus on the next one, which is another way of saying the one you don't have,
Right.
not the one you do have, you will always feel like you don't have enough.
Yes. Yeah, I was doing that driving in. Was I focused on you? No, I was focused on what I was going to say at the end of the show of who's coming on next week. And I was like, I can't believe this. Right? I'm better. I am actually, when I eat, I savor, or when I have that first sip of coffee, I love that first sip of coffee in the morning. And so my goal now is to actually enjoy like the second sip of coffee too.
Yes, that's
or the
right.
second bite.
As much as the first.
Yes. But that's a discipline too. And in present centered.
Of course it is. And it's the same discipline or practice as we were talking about before, what you do have, not what you don't have. That means noticing moment to moment. And look, people spend their whole lives like this. That's what Zen is all about.
Right.
I mean, Zen Buddhism is all about showing up in the moment. That's what the essence of all spiritual practices are about. So we're not saying, and I'm not saying, oh, this is a snap, anybody can do it. It's just understanding that unless you do, and until you do, then you will never be satisfied.
Yes.
With anything. Love, money, success, food, thin body, nothing. It's just good to know that from the get-go, because then your priorities can shift. Then you can start at least paying attention to what you do have a couple of minutes a day. It's very important to break this down into baby steps. Otherwise, people feel like, oh, man, I can't do this.
Right.
Forget it.
Right.
So, yes, you can for 12 seconds at a time.
Okay. Any last words? Any shout out? Any messages of love to anyone in particular you would like to give?
I think I want to give messages of love to everyone and say that what you most want is possible. It's just not where you think it is. And, I sort of often feel like Glinda in The Wizard of Oz, just that you've always had the power. And it's and noticing your choices, noticing that you're getting on that bus of ranting or terror or shame or guilt or fear or blame or judgment is actually the transforming of it. So it's not that far away.
Right.
What you want is the bat of an eyelash away.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. You get another Dr. Marissa Beneficial Presence on the Planet Award again. and thank you so much. I am just so, I feel like I know you now. And I'm very blessed to have that. It is a joy. Peace and blessings to you. Take care. Until the next time.
Okay,
Bye.
And I hope you got something from that. There was so much to learn about how to be happy wherever you are. That's where I want you to be 88% of the time. Happy, because that's your birthright. This is Dr. Marissa reporting live from my living room during the pandemic, reminding you that it is all about balance. Peace in, peace out, world peace through inner peace. Now go forth and multiply the happiness that you are. Take a lesson from Jacob and from Geneen Roth. And have the best day ever. See you tomorrow.